Space, the final frontier. This is the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. Its mission to explore the solar system, to seek out new observations and data, to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. And now the host of the Observer's Notebook, Tim Robertson.
Hello and welcome to episode 108 of the Observer's Notebook, the official podcast of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. I'm Tim Robertson, the host of the Observer's Notebook and also the coordinator of the training program within the ALPO. Thanks for downloading and listening. The Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers collects and analyzes of various solar system bodies and associated phenomenon and publishes detailed reports concerning these bodies in its quarterly publication, the Journal of the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers, also lovingly known as the Strolling Astronomer. This podcast depends upon donations from you, our listeners, to keep it alive. If you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, you can donate to it via Patreon. You can give as little as $1 a month. If you feel even more generous, for $5, you receive early access to the podcast before it goes public. For a monthly donation of $10, you receive a copy of the Novice Observer's Handbook. And for $35 a month, you receive producer credits and 1-year membership to the ALPO. You can help us out by going to www.patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Observer's Notebook. And if you'd like to join the ALPO, membership begins at only $18 a year. For more information, you can go to alpo-astronomy.org. You can also find the ALPO on Facebook. Just search for ALPO Astronomy. And yes, Observer's Notebook also has a Facebook page as well. Just search for Observer's Notebook. And if you enjoy what you hear on the podcast, please subscribe. That way you'll never miss another episode of it. And now, episode 108 of the Observer's Notebook with Jerry Hubbell, and we're talking exoplanets. All right, I'd like to welcome everybody back to this edition of the Observer's Notebook podcast. And we have with us today a return visitor, Jerry Hubbell, the Lunar Section Coordinator of the ALPO. Welcome back, Jerry.
Thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. I always look forward to talking with you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Now, before we get into our topic today, why don't you just give everybody a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of Engineering for Explore Scientific. That's my day job. Mm-hmm. And I've had this job for not this position, but I've been working for Explore Scientific since 2013. And I'm a retired nuclear instrumentation and controls engineer. I've got nearly 40 years of experience in the nuclear industry, plus in the electric transmission business also. I took a little hiatus from the nuclear field for my company and worked in the transmission group on the SCADA systems that control the power grid. So I learned all about that stuff, and then I went back to into the nuclear engineering group and worked there for the last part of my career.
We could use you in California to help control our power grids right now.
Yeah, right. Well,
the high winds we're having. Our neighbors had their power shut down for 29 hours.
Oh man, yeah.
On Thanksgiving.
Oh, really bad.
Yeah, not fun.
No. So I was in the transmission group during the time of deregulation when we went to decoupled the transmission from the generation and went through all that process. Back in the it was the late 90s, basically 95 to 2002 or so is when that all happened. So that's kind of cool work that I did then. But so after that, I've retired since then from the electric utility industry. And I basically started working for Explore Scientific before I retired, and then I'm taking my pension, which is really nice, and working full time for Explore Scientific.
Great. Now, how's this pandemic been to explore the business side of it?
It's unfortunately, with the lockdowns, people are locked down.
Right.
But they've apparently had, most people have had time to pursue their other interests, and that's been kind of a boon for the amateur astronomy business and the manufacturers, because our sales have gone, they've doubled or tripled.
Oh, fantastic.
Over the last year. People getting into the hobby a lot more. So I think it's a comfort thing. It's really a great psychological benefit for people to be able to get into their hobbies, and especially for the astronomy hobby, being able to take your mind off the day-to-day things and look up at the stars and understand help to understand what's going on and to discover things for yourself. That's really always a good thing.
There is no stress looking up at the heavens.
That's right.
Very good. Very good.
So so the way I got into astronomy was I started when I was, I'm 60 years old. So I grew up during the Apollo era, like a lot of people in my generation, and learning about space and the moon. And my first love is the moon in terms of observing the moon, and because of Apollo. And so I got my first telescope when I was a teenager. I actually used the telescope a little bit during grade school. We had them in our school, and I got to play with them and use them some, but not really in any serious way. And then when I was 14, I received a telescope for Christmas. That was my standard 70 millimeter Tasco, Altaz mounted telescope, which is great. And then later on, I bought myself a nicer 70 millimeter telescope on a gym mount, on the basic manual gym mount, and I used that telescope for quite a few years. And then, so I did a lot of observing, mostly bright objects, but planets and the moon. But I tried some deep sky stuff, but really didn't get into it. I actually started astrophotography back then, where I was taking my Polaroid. I got a Polaroid camera for my birthday, and I was taking Polaroid pictures through the eyepiece of the moon.
Really?
And when I was in 1976.
Wow.
So I've got some of those stashed away, which is kind of cool. And then,
I don't think Polaroid pictures like that age very well, though, do they?
No, probably not. I haven't looked at them in a while. I need to dig them out and see what they are.
Yeah, scan.
But I was really into doing observations, and then my first real nice telescope I bought in 1987. When I was thick into my career and my marriage and having kids and stuff like that, I bought in 1987. I bought a Meade 10-inch Smith-Cassegrain LX5, which was pretty old. It was just standard electronic drive. But it was I used that system visually for several years, and then I got out of the hobby after like 4 years or so, and then I got into flying. Finally got my pilot's license and got into flying real heavy after that. And
that's an expensive hobby.
Yeah, but it's great. It's a great challenge, mental and physically. If you want a good challenge, mental and physical challenge, then learn how to fly. And fly the airspace that's available to us to fly. It's really one of the most it's really the most freedom I've felt of anything that I do. Is flying. Even though you're flying in a controlled airspace, government controlled airspace, it's really you feel very free when you're up there flying your own aircraft. You're responsible for your own safety. Of course, we do that every day on cars, but it's a different level when you're up in the sky, thousands of feet,
True.
So that's what I like about it, and it's just a great challenge. It's very that being up in the sky being up in the sky and then looking at the sky are two great things.
Now, do you still fly?
Off and on, not as much as I used to. I wish I want to get back into it, but I'm just so busy doing other things. So I started. I was away from I was away from astronomy until about 2008, and we took a vacation. My family took a vacation in Colorado, and we stayed in Denver. We drove all over the state, up and down, took day trips for 10 days. We were there, and one of the trips I took was to the Chamberlain Observatory in Denver. And I got to talk to the observatory director there and got to see the equipment. It was one of the things on the list of, I made up the itinerary of what things we were going to do. And I ran across that. I said, man, I'd like to see that observatory. I had visited other observatories during my college days, but that was cool. So that kind of sparked my interest again to get back into astronomy. And I started checking out what technology was available. I'd been 15, 20 years since I'd really gotten into astronomy, and I didn't know what the technology was like at that point. And I was really flabbergasted on the improvements, and I should have realized, because I knew what improvements of flying technology, the instruments had improved over the years. So I figured, well, that's got to happen with astronomy. And it finally came to pass that you could do real science with as an amateur astronomer. In terms of, you probably do it before, but it was a little more difficult.
Right.
But I was really heavy into doing this asteroid, minor planet observations and measurements.
Okay.
And doing astrometry, measuring the positions of the asteroids and calculating orbits and stuff like that. That was one thing that really turned me on about and getting back into astronomy. I really wanted to do that, learn that science. So that's where I started back into it, back in 2008, 2009.
Great. Now, the topic we're going to talk about today has been bouncing around the board of the ALPO for probably better part of a year, and that is exoplanets.
Right.
Whether we want to start a section in the ALPO or not. In fact, you came on, I think, about 20 episodes ago and talked about the exoplanet work you were doing.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And that sparked
about a year or two ago, right? Mm-hmm.
Right. And that sparked a conversation I had with some of the board members. I said, well, do you guys want to do an exoplanet section? And, because this is every section in the ALPO is based within our solar system.
Right. It's our solar system.
This has taken a huge step out of that box.
Right.
So,
right.
What's your opinion of this?
Well, I started talking to Dr. Mike Reynolds about 2 years ago about it when I first, because I got into exoplanet observing almost 3 years ago. I took the AAVSO course Dennis Conte gave on exoplanet observing. Previous to that, I had found Bruce Gary's book. I don't know if you've got a link to that or not. I think previously you may have some links that I sent previously, but Bruce Gary was a pioneer in doing exoplanet observations with small telescopes. I hate the word amateur astronomer, even though that's a great term because we love the hobby. We love astronomy, and that's why we do it. But again, I don't like to separate the difference between amateurs and professionals. We're all astronomers.
Right.
So in terms of that, we do astronomy with small telescopes and others do astronomy with large telescopes.
And we spend more time at the telescope than the professionals do.
Right. And we actually have to tinker and build our systems and make them work where they have engineers and other people to do the work for them. They don't really learn the ins and outs of how the equipment works like we do in some respects. So they know how it works. I'm not saying they don't. Right. I'm just saying they don't work on it directly.
Right. Now, to back up just a minute, exoplanets, for those listeners that might not know what they are, they're planets that are orbiting other stars.
Right.
That's put it simply, right?
And exoplanet is a shortcut way of saying extrasolar planet.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
So when I say that the ALPO has always looked at within objects that orbit our sun, our star, now we've expanded the organization to look at other planets orbiting other star systems. And that's where you come in because you were selected to head up the exoplanet section.
I was fortunate enough to well, we talked about it, and
Mm-hmm.
then like you said, about at least a year ago, I think it was a few episodes ago, quite a few episodes ago,
Yeah.
and then I figured, well, we'll just start pushing this idea and see if we can come up with some good reasons for us to do it. They're already AAVSO has an exoplanet section already, and they deal with variable stars, so it kind of makes sense. That's another type of variable stars due to exoplanets. It's almost like a subsection of a binary star system, except the binary or the other bodies that are in orbit are smaller than a second star. And they don't give off their own light. So, but it's similar in that regard. For us, it's a totally different. It's coming from of that. They're coming it from this variable star position. We're coming it from the fact that we're a group that studies lunar and planetary objects. Right. So that got me thinking, well, we're ALPO, we're the Association of Lunar and Planetary Observers. Exoplanets are planets. Why don't we observe them and our members contribute? So that was my initial thinking about why we should be doing it as a separate organization. There are, like I said, there are other organizations that do this work with their members. I've been looking at the British Astronomical Association. They've actually got an exoplanet section that they added a year ago, or almost 2 years ago, I think it is. And a fairly famous minor planet observer, Roger Dymock, heads that group. Because I think that's because observing transits, exoplanet transits, is similar. The techniques are similar, although they're different in a lot of major respects. They're very similar to measuring minor planet light curves. There are some differences, but again, and we're talking about using the same equipment that people use pretty much for their not just for science imaging, but also pretty picture imaging. You can use a similar or same equipment to do science that you do beautiful images with. Also, there's some tweaks and some techniques that you learn. So the differences are in the techniques. But overall, the reason that we need to, that I thought we should have an exoplanet group section in our organization is because there's two drivers. One is that the professionals that get paid to do science all the time, astronomy science, their equipment is discovering thousands of these objects. They're in the discovery mode. Okay. And I'm involved a little bit with that, and we'll talk about that later. But they require, all these objects require a lot of follow-up work, and that's where we come in. And the more the merrier. We need to do follow-up work. We have plenty of objects to observe. Not everybody has all the opportunities in the world to observe them. So we spread this work around and get people trained up that are interested. That's a good thing. So the way I look at it, the more the merrier in terms of the different groups that are involved.
That's true. Yeah, and it's I think the last section the ALPO added was our meteor section, which is studying meteors that have landed on the Earth. Which is, we had the same discussion with that section started too. Well, it's lunar and planetary, but these are things that are on the Earth. It's also looking at where these meteors came from and what's their origin and things like that. So but this, in the last 10 years, the search and discovery of exoplanets has really been one of the most exciting things to happen, because it's showing us that there are other planets circling other stars. That's right. And that's a big part of this, not that the other sections that we have in the association are old. They are old in terms of the history of the observations, but
anything we can do to bring new and exciting ways of doing things, even to, for example, we've had great technology over the last 20 years that's allowed reinvigoration of Jupiter and Saturn and the other planet because of the webcam and the software we have available to do really, really high resolution imaging from the Earth.
The images of Mars just went through opposition, and the images that we're looking at now, taken from Earth of Mars, rival any image that we saw from spacecraft years before.
Oh yes, it's just amazing ingenuity of amateurs and professionals to bring this technology, and so there's other ways to reinvigorate our sections. That's one of them, is to bring new technology to the picture to where you can add, and we've done that also with the lunar section. I've tried to, and several times I've pointed out some of the tools that are available to do lunar, not just imaging and high resolution imaging, but also measurements. And that's with the Lunar Terminator Visualization Tool, the LTVT tool that we have available on the site, on the lunar section page. That's something that to me has really been a cool thing, to be able to do actual measurements from our images, and to just to understand and learn more about the topography of the moon. That's what it's all about.
Right.
And so in this way, we're bringing new technology, but we're also bringing in a brand new class of objects that we previously had not been able to understand or observe at all as small telescope operators.
Now, you mentioned that the work will be similar to what's done with the minor planet section, light curves and things like that. And the difference is minor planets, the light curve is not it passing in front of another object. It's the rotation of the minor planet to help identify the rotational period of the minor planets, and also its geometry.
That's right. That's really a neat thing. When I first learned how to do that, I just thought it was amazing. It's amazing totally what we can do with just simple light measurement. It's just so much into information in that light. Not just, spectroscopy is a huge thing. That's what started astrophysics, of spectroscopy. But even just simple light brightness measurements, photometry, you can learn so much about an object and different things. And you take the measurements and the data and you apply some critical thinking, and now all of a sudden you understand a whole lot about what the object is, even if you just gaze at it and it just looks like a spot of light, a little dot. It's just amazing over what you can do. So that's what we bring to the picture here. Like you said, minor planet observing has got a long history in the small telescope field. People doing this work, actually discovering, until about 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, people were regularly discovering new minor planets with small telescopes. And unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, we need to understand what objects are out there because of the dangers to the Earth. But I think the discovery phase for most amateurs is out of the picture unless you have access to a very large telescope somehow.
That's true. And light curves and the difference magnitude of these objects really came to light about a year ago with Betelgeuse. A lot of people discovered that this type of effect happens in our night sky, and it's common. And it I mean, we did a podcast specifically just on Betelgeuse because I was getting tons of questions on it too. I said, I just got to do something on this. So it's doing light curves, and it's fairly simple, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And the key thing that I think the exciting thing about it is that, most people get into astrophotography. They start with the beautiful images because they're so spectacular to look at, and to actually create your own, gather the photons yourself and create the image. It's great. But then it's kind of static too. People start to understand that they want to see changes in the observable universe. They don't want to just see it static objects. They want to see actual changes that happen right now, or for us right now. It's happened in the past, but we detect it and measure it right now. That to me is the biggest thing that drives science is measuring changes in the dynamic universe, and the fact that our universe is dynamic and our solar system is dynamic, and we can actually see the dynamism of the solar system through our own personal observations. That's what's cool about it.
Yeah. Now, what type of equipment are we talking about that people are going to need to help contribute to this section?
So the equipment, most people have the technology today to do these measurements. There's I would say 90 to 95% of it. There's some technique involved, there's some analysis involved, and other things to learn. But the typical astrophotographer that's out there using small telescopes, and we're talking small. I used a 6.5 inch refractor, a 6.5 inch telescope, and the reason is because the exoplanet stars, the host stars are fairly bright, and that's what's geared towards and we've had 2 science NASA missions specifically for exoplanets. The first one was Kepler, which observed a patch of space in Cygnus that was a long-term study and survey of that area of the sky. It just focused on that. And then you got TESS just completed their 4-year. They're starting a second phase of the mission, or second mission that mirrors the first mission, where they observed the southern and northern hemisphere. And then, but those were discovery missions, and they were the thing about the TESS mission especially is that they were focused on the closer, brighter stars, which lends itself to smaller telescopes. And in fact, the TESS mission satellite used four wide field telescopes that were 4 inches in aperture.
Really?
Yeah. So the discovery phase was using these small telescopes. That means that amateurs can observe these same objects that they detect. Now, they were very wide field telescopes because they're doing an all sky survey. And they were kind of like the finder scope for new exoplanets. They just detected transients, but they couldn't, because of the plate scale of the images, they couldn't determine exactly which star had the exoplanet, and they looked for fairly generic changes in the brightness of the star over time, and they could not determine directly from the test data whether it was a variable star, whether it was a eclipsing binary, which is really an eclipsing binary looks very similar to a exoplanet, except in certain very specific respects. So there was no way to know. So the test mission necessarily always had a follow-up mission, ground-based follow-up portion of the science mission also, which was the first specifically. I don't know if it's the very first, but it was one I've heard about that NASA specifically said we will be enlisting ground-based observations as part of this mission, and we will be inviting amateurs directly to provide support for the follow-up mission. And that goes on today. So the follow-up mission is not just to verify objects that TESS initially discovered, to say, yes, this is an exoplanet, or no, this is an eclipsing binary. TESS also require the data that once you do this discovery and you say, yes, it's an eclipsing binary, you can put it in your eclipsing binary program, or it's an exoplanet, we need follow-up. You need follow-up work from the ground for long-term, because the ephemeris of the exoplanet might change from the initial observations. We want to see changes in the orbit of the exoplanet itself. And it's similar. It's very similar to what we do with minor planets today. You do follow-up measurements of minor planets to make sure you nail the orbit down, and you don't lose track of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what could happen with exoplanets. If you don't nail down the orbital period, especially for longer-term exoplanets that are not just days between, most of the exoplanets that have been discovered have very short orbital periods of, a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe a month, something like that. But that's based on the cadence of the discovery. There could very well be exoplanets that you could detect in those same systems that have orbital periods of a year to 2 years, whatever. And they'll be discovered in the future. And so you don't want to lose track of those because you don't have very much opportunity to observe those very often. So you really need long-term follow-up work on all these exoplanets.
I take it that's one of the goals of the section.
That's right. That's exactly right. So the main goal, one of the major goals is to provide tools to the membership, tools and techniques to the membership to provide effective follow-up observations to help refine the ephemerides of the planets. When I'm talking about orbital period, and nail down changes in, refinements of the size of the planet and the mass and all that stuff, you can effectively do those measurements as an amateur.
Now, are you going to have a handbook available to members of the section or some training available? Yeah,
there's going to be both a handbook. I've actually done quite a bit of writing on this because I'm involved with a remote observatory that we built here. It's been in operation for about 5 years called the Mark Slade Remote Observatory. And 3 years ago, we started we joined the test mission follow-up team as a group to provide these type of observations for tests for the test mission. And I wrote a bunch of procedures and some other things, and I'll be turning that information into a handbook for the ALPO.
Okay.
That it's going to take some more work. It's fairly complete. There's some other procedures. It's a lot of detailed technical information. I do have some training that I've held. I've actually done quite a bit of Zoom sessions with our membership, with our team, to train people how to do the observations is one thing, right? The analysis is a whole nother thing. So there's two sides of the coin. You can do the observations, make effective observations, and get the data that's required. And then when you do the analysis to do the modeling of the planetary system and see how the observations you took match the model, the existing model. If there's changes to the model in terms of, like I said, the size of the planet or what that you measured and the midpoint time of the transit, all that type, the ingress and egress time and all that stuff. Just similar. It's identical to measuring a Venus transit or Mercury transit. In terms of those types of parameters, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, I'd like to offer you up too, because we have a YouTube channel, and if you've got videos of you,
we can create videos of how to do things.
Yeah,
for sure, with the Mark Slade Remote Observatory, we can demonstrate.
That would be incredible.
These techniques. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, okay, we can do that.
Great. Put that on your calendar. Let's do that. One more thing to do.
That's right. I actually did this. We did a Explore Scientific, our Facebook page in November of, I think it was in November of 2018. Was it? Think about this. Yeah, it was in November of 2018. We did a live program where I was going to demonstrate the Mark Slade Remote Observatory, and I actually was doing an exoplanet measurement live on the air. Doing observations, and got that going. And actually, that was one of the better observations I did. We were able to capture a complete light curve and do some really good measurements. And I think I shared that observation with you the last time.
Yep.
Did I send you the the presentation I did.
Yep.
It was Exoplanet Hat 16 Bravo, Hat 16B, and it turned out very well.
Yeah, very good.
That video is floating out there on Facebook somewhere. I can probably find it.
Okay.
And we can maybe link to it for people to watch.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Also,
that'd be great. So, just a side question: when we're observing these exoplanets, what's the variance in magnitude we're talking about?
Oh, yeah. So this is very important. So typical. I'm just going to say typical variable stars, like eclipsing binaries.
Mm-hmm.
You can have magnitude changes of, at a minimum of a half to 1 magnitude up to 2 or 3 magnitudes. Okay, it's very noticeable. On minor planets, I've measured even a large minor planet. I've measured, I think it was, number Flores or number 9, or I think it was number 9. I can't remember exactly, but it was a fairly large, roundish, I guess I should say, minor planet. It wasn't one of the smaller ones that are really brick shaped or really have a big light curve. So this one I was measuring, and I thought it was going to have a fairly shallow light curve, but it turned out to be 0.4 magnitude change, even with this larger asteroid, minor planet. And that kind of surprised me a little bit. So that's the range we're in there, like 0.4 magnitude, okay, which is like I'm trying to say how it is. It's like a 40% change in light.
Right.
Okay. Now, exoplanets are around 1 to 2% change in light. All right, when we get down that low, we measure it in millimags, or thousandths of a magnitude. And so typical exoplanets can be Jupiter-sized ones, are like around 20 millimag, I should say, 2% or 20 millimag. All right, some of them can be down around 10 millimag. Okay, the typical variable star, when you measure the star brightness, a precision of 1% is considered excellent especially with small telescopes. Okay, so if you can measure the magnitude of a star within to 1%, you're doing excellent work. We're talking about 5 times better than that. Okay, in terms of precision. Again, with a small telescope.
Right.
If any of your viewers or listeners had not heard or listened to the previous program, I don't want to get into it heavy right now, but I developed a technique that was pioneered by universities using a new instrument to do this small high precision measurement, photometric measurement, using a new instrument, and we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, that's the defocus, right?
There's two. That's the diffuser method.
Okay.
The defocus, you can do defocus method to get partway there, but again, you can't. There's a lot of issues with that, but we can link. We wrote a paper about it that we can link to this broadcast. I think you had linked it before on the other broadcast.
I have it. I have it queued up to be linked on this one too.
Right. So there's very specific techniques that you can use to do this follow-up work and do high precision measurements to see changes in the magnitude down to around 2 to, I've gotten up to a precision of around 1 millimag total precision, depending on how you use a measurement.
Now you're saying that most amateurs already have this equipment to measure this?
Not to this level.
Okay. Okay.
Not to this level. This is brand new stuff.
Okay.
This is cutting edge technology for our use, and also for big telescope use also.
Okay.
Yes. So if any astrophotographer out there that uses his equipment, that's got a standard rig, that's got a nice, fairly good size 8-inch let's say they got an 8-inch Smith Cassegrain. They've got a nice astro camera that's got a thermoelectric cooler on it. They can do photometry. Let's say they've done some variable star photometry, or they've done some minor planet photometry. They can do these measurements for exoplanets and using standard defocus technique and just other techniques that they use to do photometry. They could maybe see some of the larger exoplanets. They could do some exoplanet work, but not a whole lot in terms of some of the ones that are available that are 10 millimags or less in terms of amplitude, light change amplitude. And you got to realize we're trying to get rid of a lot of sources of noise and error in this measurement, and it's all noise, and it's just different factors involved in the noise, and I get into that in my paper on what's involved with correcting and compensating for these sources of noise to get the precision to where we need it. So that's what's involved in the techniques. It's actually a new instrument. You can learn the techniques. You can learn a lot of the analysis with existing equipment, but to be able to do the actual measurement on specific exoplanets that have they call it, I'm trying to think. They have the depth of the transit is around 2% to 1%. You can basically detect that there's an exoplanet. Now the next thing after you detect an exoplanet is to do the actual precision measurement to be able to model the system. Okay, to be able to take that data and say, okay, this is the size of the exoplanet because we've done a precision measurement of this depth. One thing is to see a dip. The other one is to measure it precisely. Okay, so that's what's involved with this follow-up work, and also to measure the precise value for the ingress and egress, and to be able to detect that precisely. That takes a little bit of work also, and to measure the midpoint time, which is basically the orbital periods based on the midpoint time of the transit.
Okay, now this section is not going to focus on discovering these objects. It's going to focus on monitoring already known.
That's right. Okay. Do the follow-up. That's the purpose of the section, is to do follow-up work on exoplanet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So are you working closely with a professional astronomer in this field?
I've been working with, over the last couple of years, our team at the Mark Slade Remote Observatory is a member of the TESS follow-up working group.
Okay.
And we're a member of the SG1 group, a subgroup of that, which is the Seeing Limited. It's called the Seeing Limited subgroup. And basically what that means is that you can do observations that are only limited by your local seeing. And I'm talking about scintillation. If you don't know what seeing is, it's a scintillation of the stars. And there's ways around it. There's refractive error in the scintillation that causes scintillation. But again, we've developed techniques and tools to get around that.
Okay.
But again, we're always limited to seeing limited because they're actually visual type of light measurements. They're not spectroscopy measurements. They're just photometric, basically ground-based photometric measurements is what the Seeing Limited group is all about. And I've worked with them. The leader of that team her name's Karen Collins. She wrote. She was involved with the writing, and I think she was a principal investigator for creating an analysis tool for exoplanets and actually other light curves you want to analyze called Astro Image J, which I think I referred to in the previous broadcast. So that's the major analysis tool that we use that will be provided to members. It's a freely available program.
Oh, wow.
And there's a lot of good documentation on it, and we'll be providing some training materials for using that analysis tool to do the analysis. And then there's another group I've been working with the past year It's based in JPL sponsors it. It's called Exoplanet Watch, and it's a citizen science program that JPL Dr. Robert Zellum is the head of that group. And I'd have to find the webpage for it, but I've been involved with that group some. They've developed an analysis tool that's been in development over a year now, that's available to freely use online, and that's another tool that people can use to do analysis. I haven't gotten into that analysis tool as much as I have AstroImage-J, so that's another analysis tool that we'll probably be developing some procedures and some guidelines for, and some other things based on already what's available out there to do the analysis. But the major thing that I worked on with the MSRO is the observation side, how to do the observations, how to do the measurements, and get the data ready for analysis, basically.
Okay. And all the analysis will be done by the ALPO as well? Or are you going to?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
No. So the goal is to get everybody trained up, all the membership that's interested, trained up to do not just the observations, but the analysis, because the professionals just want the final analyzed data results. Right. And then it's just like, it's almost just like on the Minor Planet Bulletin. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
With the Minor Planet section.
Yep.
There's reports that come out about observations that we do on the minor planets, and it's basically a summary of the observation and the results. That's basically what we want to get to in this section, also, to be able to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how this really would benefit the ALPO too, in its visibility in the professional and amateur community.
Right, exactly. It's just another way of us to attract membership and to say, yes, we can. We have these programs. We have people that are interested in, and we have tools available to help you learn how to do this work.
Yeah. Now, if people want to become a member of this section, obviously they have to be members of the ALPO first. What type of communication will you have with people that contribute to the section?
Well, that's kind of what I'm kind of modeling this after the lunar section, since I'm familiar with the lunar section, but it's probably similar to the other section. So we're going to have a newsletter, a monthly newsletter, which right now I've named it the Exoplanet Observer to model it after other sections. The name, like the Minor Planet Observer, and the Lunar Observer is another newsletter that's by the lunar section. So this one right now is called the Exoplanet Observer. I know it's probably not the most fancy name or the most catchy name, but again, it's exactly what it is. It's about the Exoplanet Observer, and so we'll have that. We'll have the website that's on part of the ALPO website. We'll have that section website, which will have links to tools. It'll have, I'd like to be able to do links to data sources, data catalogs. I'd like to be able to have a way to post observations, kind of like what we do right now in the lunar section and other sections. We have imaging a gallery. I think the Minor Planet Center takes the data for the minor planets, so you can go there to find all the data that ALPO members provide. Right? We don't. I mean, there's ways we can provide, and this is part of the tools also that we'll provide, is how to report your observations to these professional groups that take the data, like the test mission. Like there's other groups out there that will take these observations. The AAVSO has developed a database to take observations of minor planets. We may decide to contribute to their database. I'm not sure we'll have to see what our members think about in the future about having our own local database we're going to have something that we're going to say, these are the observations we did.
Right.
And they'll be sent to the other everybody else in the world that wants our data, basically, is what it'll be. And we'll have to work out procedures and methods for that, for any of the groups that we'd identify that want to take our data.
And the data observations will also be published in the journal, correct?
Yes, exactly. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They'll be, yes, exactly.
So when do you think you'll be officially kicking off this section where you have all your all your plans and your documentation set up?
Well, I'd like to start off earlier rather than later. So all the documentation may not be 100% complete. In fact, I know it won't be 100% complete. What we like to do the first quarter of next year will be the kickoff quarter, where we'll start advertising it and getting people to join up, and then we'll get people. We'll probably, I don't know. I guess I'd like to appoint an assistant coordinator. 1, 2, 3. I'm not sure. I know there's different sections. There's different subsections to the exoplanets section that I'd like to have. Maybe one's the observing section or the observing group in the exoplanet section. One's maybe the instrument and equipment group, and then the other one might be the analysis group.
Yeah, because everybody
like that.
Not everybody that makes observations likes to do the analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
And some people, right, exactly. And then some people that just want to do analysis and take our data and do the analysis for us. So that would be good. The people are interested in these different parts of it. And there's probably going to be a group for reporting, Who's going to create the final reports to send off to all the other groups that want our data. So I'm thinking it's going to be something like that. Now, I don't know how many people are actually going to be committed to joining and doing whatever needs to be done for this section. That's what this first year is about, I think, is seeing how much we can get done in the first year. But again, it's going to take a group effort. I'd like to appoint at least 2 assistant coordinators to start with, to help with the workload. I've got a lot of material that's available that I can send to everybody that's interested and get their feedback on it. But we need to, and probably first thing I'm going to do is develop an outline for all of our documentation and the different parts of the documentation and the training. That may take also a training assistant training coordinator or something, assistant coordinator for training. I mean, it is a lot of work. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with other sections on what they've had to do to get something like this started. Of course, a lot of our stuff was started a long time ago.
Right.
So,
well, modeling after the lunar section is a good idea because they're doing a really good job.
There's a lot of different coordinators there, assistant coordinators to do things, and but I think a big part of this at least at the beginning of this exoplanet section is going to be training. I think that's just to get people up to speed. That's going to be a big part of the mission for the group.
I agree. Wow. This is great. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, I know. I want to enlist your help on it. I don't know. Sure. Do you want to be an assistant coordinator?
We'll talk about that offline. I got a few things. I'm still working.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add about the section or yourself?
Let me see here. So I think a big part of convincing the ALPO board of directors was talking about what are the benefits to the members, what are the benefits to the ALPO. We talked a little bit about that. This provides another avenue to promote the ALPO and provide another way to recruit members to the organization. And it's another way to highlight the good work that the ALPO members do.
True, very true.
Part of the organization. The other thing I think for members, the member benefits of joining this group is, of course, the newsletter. They'll get the monthly newsletter and understand and get and the newsletter is going to be a little bit different than the Lunar Observer. I'm going to include, like I said, major sections for the observations that we receive. That's always going to be the thing. And then we're going to have an equipment section, techniques section, equipment techniques. And then we're going to have, maybe some other sections like the training for sure. We're going to have a training section where we'll go over a topic each month about how to do either the observations or the analysis, that type of thing, I think.
And that's going to be, this is all in the newsletter.
In the newsletter, right.
Okay. And there's no charge for the newsletter?
No charge for the newsletter.
As long as you're a member of the
ALPO. Joining an ALPO membership, right?
That's only $18 a year. So
yeah, that's cheap as dirt.
That's like 2 cups of coffee.
It probably should be raised to $25 a year.
I'll put that in. Yeah. No, it's an exciting
I know we got
section.
a lot of members that are a great, membership. We don't want to make it costly for people to join and to contribute.
It's true. That's true. And this is an exciting new endeavor for the organization, which really is very exciting.
Yes.
And I think we picked the right. I think we picked the right guy for the job too.
Well, I appreciate that. Nothing's turned me on in astronomy since asteroids. Since I got into exoplanets. I mean, it just really. Of course, it's new and exciting. It's alien life possibility type stuff. It's like, Star Trek type stuff. Yep. It's really why people are interested in space and science to begin with, probably from science fiction.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording. Today was the test launch of the SpaceX Starship.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I don't know, the YouTube feed I was watching had 142,000 people watching, and it was not NASA's feed. It was not SpaceX's feed. It was just some guys that got webcams out there and put them on the site. You're watching this, and it's just like 142,000 people watching a test of a rocket.
Yeah, right.
And I was on this. I was watching this for 4 hours. It's just like,
yeah, exactly.
So it's amazing. The interest is there.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like we just need to grab these people, people that are interested in actually doing some science with modest amateur astronomy equipment.
Right, with fairly modest equipment. That's right. Yeah. And we're trying to. And our goal as part of Explore Scientific. I don't even mean to push our company and our equipment, but our goal as a company has always been to push the technology down, high value technology down into lower cost realm so more people can have access to it. It's all about access to the technology and the techniques and the ideas. That's what our company is all about, and that's what I'm all about.
Well, and I know Scott Roberts has been on the podcast before. He's a great guy. I've known him for many, many, many years, back to our TMC days when he worked for Meade. And you guys do a video chat almost every day.
Oh yeah, we do a daily show. Yep, and it's called the Open Go-To Community Explorer Alliance is our program, our channel. And we do. I support our customers on a broadcast that we do called Open Go-To Community for the PMC8 system. Great system. I've got it. Oh yes, I appreciate that. I know. It still works for you, right? Still works. Yeah, I just love the fact that I had the opportunity to design and build that system. It's just amazing. Yeah, I had issues early on, but I think it was a lot of people do have issues. It was operator because it's not like any other system. Right, exactly. And it was mostly operator error, I think, at that point. Well, it's hard for some people. I mean, for a lot of people to get their heads wrapped around the concepts that I've introduced in the controller compared to what's been out there for decades, basically. Right. It's just a different way of doing things, and I don't want to compare myself to SpaceX because that's not at all a comparable thing, but But again, they do it different than NASA, and I do it different than everybody else.
True. Well, Jerry, this has been a real pleasure having you on the podcast again.
Well, I appreciate it, Tim. It's I love talking about this stuff.
And maybe next year when the section gets up and running and you've got some results to share, you can come back on.
Yeah, we can actually get on maybe in February and talk about how the startup is going with the group and what we've got in place and stuff like that, and where people can go, have more concrete things available for people to download and to look at and to understand.
That's great. Maybe you can do some demonstrations live on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, we can do that too. We can start thinking about what we want to do for videos, and those can be part of our training system too, these videos.
Sounds like a plan. All right, sir. Well, you have a excellent holiday season. Stay safe.
You too. Yep. Thanks a lot, Tim.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Observer's Notebook. I really want to thank jerry.hubbell for coming on the podcast. And I'm really excited about this exoplanet section. I want you all to check it out. We upload a new episode of the Observer's Notebook on the 1st and 15th of every month. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. If you do, please rate and review us. I really appreciate it. And you can also listen to us on Apple Radio, iHeartRadio, Soundcloud, Spreaker, Google Play, Stitcher, and the Amazon Echo. You can help support the podcast by donating to it via Patreon by giving up to $35 a month, where you receive 1 year's membership to the ALPO and also producer credits on the podcast. And with that, I want to thank the producers of this podcast, Steve Seidentop and Michael Moyer, for their generous support of the Observer's Notebook. Thank you very much, gentlemen. The link for Patreon, as well as the link for the ALPO, is available in the show notes. If you'd like to get a hold of me, you can email me at cometman@cometman.net, or you can grab me over at the Twitter at observersnbpod. Until next time, my hope is you always have clear and steady skies. Thanks for listening, and stay healthy.